Hi everyone. Thanks for joining. Uh, I'm Esther, and it's just really nice to be back here. I think we had a pretty great, pretty good discussion last time, and it was great hearing your insights and your thoughts. So, you know, I'm excited to hear more from you. There will be a participatory section at the end where we do breakout groups and discussions, so and kind of integrate some of what we've discussed. But yeah, before we get going, I wanted to check in and just see if there are any like burning questions or things you've been thinking about since last meeting, and also just welcome everyone. So feel free to come, just share or pop in chat what you're thinking.
No burning questions. I'm still just eager to learn more. Um, the more I think about it, I think some worker co-ops may work in some scenarios that I have going on in a couple of different spaces. So,
Okay, awesome, cool, great. And if you want to put in chat, just like your name, um, let's see, name, group you're with or groups, your pronouns, and um what city you're in or where you're at if it's not a city. Um I'll put that if you want to just share in chat, that would be great. And also add in anything if you want to like make sure we talk about it today. So yeah, so let's do a little bit of recap from last time. So we were talking about worker co-ops in particular and why they matter, right? Like workers in this country face a lot of challenges, and those who particularly face a lot of difficult work situations, like BIPOC folks and uh, lower income groups, are forming co-ops at a greater rate, right? We saw that in the data. It makes sense, right? We need alternatives. And we also talked about, um, some of the history and then the work it, own it part of co-ops. So so on one hand, we have our worker hat, and on the other hand, we have our owner hat too. And in this society, in this society, they don't always go hand in hand, but in worker co-ops, it's really cool because they do. Um, so yeah, I'm going to go over, let me share my screen here and I'll go over the agenda today. I also want to just catch up a few things from last time. Oh wait, let me see here. Share. Let's see. Do, do, do. Do you see my screen? Awesome. Great. Thank you. So today, in particular, like our focus, like I'm going to do a little review, but our focus is going to be on building and sustaining a successful worker co-op. And um, and so we'll talk a little bit more about what it means, like the practical ins and outs. So starting the co-op, financing and funding it. I'll share a little bit about shared capital, where I'm currently working. We'll discuss community building and how to use your co-op ecosystem to your support, right? Because we want to use our co-op to our co-op values to our advantage and make those work for us and each other. And then we'll talk about some common challenges and solutions and go walk through some scenarios together. And that's going to be the breakout. So let me go back here from last week. Just a reminder. Um, so, work it, own it. Worker co-ops are worked and owned by the owners, and there's one member, one vote. Each member has a shared ownership and equal ownership, both, with the stock, one voting stock, and with one vote. And it's a democratic form of business, which is pretty cool. So there's also the governance versus management side. So just a reminder, um, when you're making decisions together as a co-op, you want to think about wearing different hats And one hat is your governance hat. And that's usually at like the higher level, the strategic level, things that impact the whole co-op. It's the board. So how many of you have been on a board before? Yeah. So in this case, usually the board consists of majority worker owners, if not all worker owners. Um, and then there's also the worker owner body. So this is particularly useful in a larger co-op. So when I was at Equal Exchange, we had about 100 people and maybe an 8-person board. So not every worker owner is going to be on that board, right? Just a few of them are. So it was really important that we also got together and had conversations as workers, right? And how decisions impact us. So we would talk about things too through that channel. And there might be committees or general circles. It depends on your structure. Um, yeah. And then with management, that's more the day-to-day operations. And it could be either a traditional top-down business, like at Equal Exchange, my manager had a manager and, you know, um, I reported to them. I definitely say there was a more collaborative culture than a lot of jobs, which was good. But, in essence, it was a top-down. Um, And then, but I will say through the governance side as a worker owner, I got to review our co-CEOs and I got to review our managers, my manager each year. Like we all had reviews each year. So, they still had to have some accountability, you know what I mean? It's like it was pretty great. If you ask me. So, um, and then the other co-ops are run more flat, where people are involved in the decision-making process together more, um, on more things. Or maybe there's not a hierarchy, but there is like a circles of responsibilities. That's a way to really like make it collective and clear about who's doing what. You can look there's some resources here, um, like the co-op mini guides from the US Federation of Worker Co-ops. So, I recommend you download this slide deck afterwards and just like check it out because there's a lot more depth in the resources and like tools. But yeah, you just want to think about which hat you're wearing at different points, right? Oh, and there's a man with a little hat on. I thought that was silly. Anyway, um, let's see here. We also have some more resource sources around profit sharing, setting member fees, all of that. So, when you're starting to organize a co-op, whether you're part of it or you're trying to help other folks, you want to just talk with other co-ops first of all. And a great way to do that is just to reach out and oftentimes, like find some, Google some that are like similar to what you're looking at. Maybe it's size, industry, community, location. Just like do a little research. And oftentimes people love to talk to each other, as long as they have time. Like usually time's the only issue. But it's a really like culture. There's a real culture of collaboration and sharing. Um, you can see if there's a local co-op association to get involved with or chat with. The national one for worker co-ops is the US Federation of Worker Co-ops, where a lot of the links are from. Keep learning, like go to the, webinars, um, keep exploring, seeing what's out there, who's out there. Go to conferences. There's the annual Worker Co-op conference. Oh, I mean, it's every other year. So it won't be this year, but it'll be 2026. And then the local ones, they tend to fund more the local conferences at the other years. So this year, you can look and see if there's some local ones. You could reach out to the Federation and see if they know of any local ones. So, and there's the website for the Federation, usworker.coop. Um, so a really important part of worker co-ops is building a strong team. And, I think this is fun. It's funny because sometimes I think people might think of that as kind of like, oh, too touchy-feely or, oh, like, like that's great and all, but where do we get the money? You know, that sort of thing. Um, But in my experience, um, this is actually extremely foundational and will help you run a better business too. Help the co-op be better as a business. Um, when you can build trust, showing up for each other, just coming to the meetings and finding shared values to connect around, to build your business, you're going to have a lot stronger co-op. And shout out to my coworker owner, Mavry Davis, who thought of this concept. And then I did the little people. I do illustration. So they're little, little people, um, cartoons. Um, but like, you know, that's what we did with the Ajani group. We met regularly for years and just kept getting to know each other and share our experiences, build that trust. And then we started taking on projects project by project, you know. And honest to God, yeah, right. Thank you, Sean. And honest to God, like this is like the reason I've seen a lot of one of the top two reasons I've seen a lot of co-ops like fall apart, which is really sad. Like we don't want to like put all this energy into it and then miss out. Like this is a really important, critical, key part. So I just wanted to make sure to note that. Um, I'll go through these and then, well, and then to start the co-op, again, you can explore it. You could start a little steering committee. It's called a steering committee. And people kind of investigate what's going on. It may or may not be the actual worker owners or people who may or may not join down the road, but they want to help. They're interested. They're like exploring. Um, Doing an assessment. So make sure that you have a good business plan. Make sure it makes sense, like whatever business you're getting into. So that's with worker co-ops, you got to really make sure that you have a good business that's going to sustain the livelihoods, and so you can build those quality jobs that we want, right? Um, Sometimes people focus on like either the financial business side or the value side, but both are absolutely critical with this model. Um, like when I was at Equal Exchange, it was definitely like work it, own it. And so every day I was doing my job. I wanted to make sure that, the small farmer partners we worked with got good, we had good sales for them. And every day when I would send an email or talk with people or create educational materials, I had that in mind, definitely took ownership over my work. And we all, a lot of us, like all of us did. Um, and then after you've assessed your business idea and you have a good group together, usually it's three or more people. At least that's what we use at Shared Capital, and most groups use like three or more people for it to be a co-op. You can incorporate. And so first you get an EIN number from the IRS, and then you file articles of incorporation and adopt bylaws at the state level. I'll go over that a little more in depth in a minute. Um, but then you open a bank account. After that, you prepare a business plan, elect a board of directors. Um, you might have to have a temporary board when you file with the state, FYI, and then you can always update it later. And then you can capitalize and start securing capital, and you have a safe place to put it and a formal place to put that money because you want to make sure you have like somewhere secure. So folks, it's not in anyone's personal bank account or anything. Um, and then you launch and you can hire more people should you have the money, um, address any licensing or regulatory or insurance requirements. Those are very important to keep in mind as a business, right? Like you'd have to think of that with, whatever business you're starting as an entrepreneur. You'd have to think like, okay, if this is childcare or home care, there are a ton of regulations or, insurance requirements. And maybe if it's an education co-op, you need licensing. Um, you really want to think about what industry you're in and really learn about those requirements before you fully get going. Because some industries have quite a few requirements for workers, and you just want to make sure you're mentally and emotionally prepared. So, and like time wise. Um, And make sure that you have systems and structures in place to commit to ongoing member training and education so that people keep staying involved. And again, we'll go into that in a little more in depth soon. So yeah, so it's just some more questions to ask before starting. Like, what's the need that's not being met? What problem are you solving with your co-op? Maybe it's great coffee, for your neighborhood. Maybe there's no meeting space, so you create a cute little coffee shop, you know. Um, or maybe you want um, a restaurant with foods that are more reflective of your community, so you open one up in your neighborhood. You want to think, who are the members? What would motivate people to join the co-op? Um, like that might be a good job. It might be flexible hours if your co-op is into that. You have to decide as members what you want to do. But something I say to people is like if they're thinking about it, like what is the value? Like, why are you thinking of starting a worker co-op? And what's the value to the other people? Like, why would they join? Hi, hey Ron. Um, what's the value to other worker owners joining? Um, if it's already an industry and folks have can already find great jobs in a particular industry that pay really well and they're happy enough, it may be less likely to become a worker co-op, right? But if it's in an industry that's, really where it's really useful to have more people and more support for each other and in navigating how to run a business, it's a big job to run a business, then it might be really useful to be a worker owner, right? To start a worker co-op. Yeah, and then just some market thoughts like who are your competitors who's already doing this? Um, again, like what are you offering that's unique? Really honing your brand and your messaging. Who are your first customers going to be? Maybe you start project by project. That can be a way to build up. And then also like reaching out to other co-ops and strategic partners, mission-based partners. My dad did worker co-op organizing in Cincinnati, um, and they had worked, help work. He worked with a janitorial co-op, worker co-op, and most of their clients were congregations, like churches, mosques, synagogues around town. And he really built those relationships over decades. Um, and it was a perfect scale for a smaller size, medium size worker co-op. Like I think it ranged from um maybe like 15, usually is on average probably 15, 20 members. Um, and that's a great scale to have for that size of co-ops. You want to match your clients with your with your scale of workers and how fast you can grow. As you grow, you can take on bigger clients, that sort of thing. Learn a little more. Um, and I think mission-based partners are really powerful because you're connecting around something to build a better world and you're providing a service that they'd use anyway, right? Like with janitorial, you know, co-op, they needed someone to clean their church offices or their churches, and so, or mosques. Um, and so, it was perfect for the co-op to come in and, just take over that role, right? So there's actually a lot of power in that, financially too, with the mission part, right? Um, and I don't mean that in an exploitative way, but rather like, how can we support each other in this economy that we're in? So I went through this. Yeah, here's some tips I have. So using your co-op values and mission to your advantage. Um, this can help with you can think of it both with your customer base. So again, like at Equal Exchange, we had a quarter of our sales. We had when I was there, we had like I think 30 million in sales each year. Now it's like 70 million, which blows my mind. Um, but like the 30 million when I was there, like a whole quarter was the interfaith program, which sold to religious groups for their like coffee after. mass or whatever it was, their services, um, or fundraisers. And so, we found that mission match. It was a great fit. Um, and also forming sustainable supply chains. So you can think of, okay, like I need vendors for my co-op. Maybe you're a coffee shop and you want to find um, a manufacturing co-op that produces some supplies you need, right? And then you can also sell to uh, grocery co-ops nearby or something like that, right? Or market yourself to local worker co-ops to use your space and hold activities. And then it's like double branding, right? Um, let's see, I've already talked about some of these things. Oh yeah, definitely finding experts to help your co-op is important, whether that's for your particular industry, conducting a feasibility study or membership development. There are a lot of people out there called co-op developers or co-op organizers. Um, like I've done that in the past with the University of Wisconsin Center for Co-ops and do it with the Johnny Group. Um, there are a ton throughout this area. Some of you are co-op developers. Could you give me raise your hand if you're doing like co-op development work or organizing? Yeah, great. Yeah, awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Katrina or Karina. Nice. Dennis. Thank you. Um, yeah, so some of you are doing that. Um, and then I recommend using your local support networks like that even if they aren't co-op specific. So when I was starting my own, I was trying to start my own little co-op like maybe 10, 15 years ago, um, to do like, oh yeah, yeah. Actually, I worked with I worked with Kelly on this. I had just gotten out of grad school and I was doing like market planning analysis. And I went to my local the SBDC and took some courses there on how to start a business. And I also went to a free legal clinic at Northern Kentucky University. Um, they had a free legal clinic, and I just went there and got help with developing my bylaws. It was awesome. So, I had no experience with that stuff prior. That was before I was a co-op developer. So that was really helpful. So use your resources. Maybe some of y'all are familiar with that kind of thing, but not everyone is. And, you can just share with each other and, share that knowledge, keep learning, help people learn where to learn. Um, and I definitely recommend uh, either joining or helping create co-op associations. So co-ops, right? Like, and that can help with like learning together how to do this work. It can help with like building up a supply chain, a market. Um, Sean, we're part of Cooperation Milwaukee. Wait, right? Yeah. So Sean there's from Milwaukee. Thank you for joining. I'm in Milwaukee. So yeah. Appreciate your work. But it's like people are talking all the time. They're on Signal. They have meetings. They're just talking, 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 and they just throw out ideas, and it's really powerful. It's really good, and it helps build that trust, and you get to be creative together. I love it. So yeah, here's a resource I found. Oh yeah, a few people. I know a few folks put it together. It's very good. Anti-racist facilitation guide for co-op development. Um, so keep that in mind. Again, you'll have this deck so you can like look it up. I have some links there. Um, and with incorporation of your co-op, so legal incorporation, there are a few different considerations. So can someone explain, like, what do I mean when I say incorporation of your co-op? What's that mean? So it refers to, let's see here. Oh, wait, did someone put in chat? Let me see here. Yes, to be official with the state. Perfect. Yes. Oh, and also thank you, Karina. A feasibility study. Yeah, definitely. Feasibility study, very important. Um, but yeah, to be official with the state, right? So you gotta so businesses have to incorporate. So like if you're starting your own little like LLC, like I had been a while back, you gotta incorporate with the state. I mentioned the IRS EIN number earlier, so you gotta incorporate with these governmental bodies, um, and make sure you're in good standing. And you have options. So you could incorporate as it depends on your state, but you could incorporate as an LLC, um, a regular corporation, a co-op corporation. It depends on your particular, the statutes in your state, what your options are. Um, some states, like California in particular, I think they might be the only one. I think maybe them and possibly like shoot, maybe I forget. I think I know California requires you to incorporate under the California co-op statute in order to call yourselves a co-op publicly. So if you incorporate as an LLC, even if your bylaws are all set up to be like, or operating agreement are all set up to be cooperative, you can't call yourself a co-op technically. Um, So you just want to make sure you know which state, what your law, the regulations, the rules are for your state. Um, you want to think about what industry um, that can influence which, how you incorporate. Um, and you want to think about employment law and regulations. And this can be particularly relevant for some industries. So if and like you want to make sure that you're in compliance with that because, with worker co-ops, you're particularly thinking about employees, right? Like the workers. And so, um, like basically like if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, you know, it, you gotta act like it's a duck. So like um so like if your staff is acting has their hat on that is more like a traditional employee hat. They're working 40 hours a week, they're working, contributing to operations, not just management of the company, then you might need to be in compliance with some labor laws. So it's like this is like on your radar so that you make sure to look into this more for your particular situation. But you can look that up. So like if they are contractors versus employees. So, the 1099 versus W-2 forms, right? With IRS. So these are just some things to like be on your radar. I'm not going to go super into depth into that, but you need to know about it and you need to know that you need to research it. Okay. Also, documentation status. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. So in Illinois, okay, I'm looking at the chat. Karina says in Illinois, you can be a limited worker co-op or limited worker cooperative association. Nice. Um, which is an entity that their organization and others they've partnered with have worker co-ops to be recognized. Excellent. Yes, it's beautiful. That's great. Thank you for sharing. Awesome. Yeah, it's really good to learn from each other about these different models to make them work for us, right? And in particular with documentation status, if you have folks who are not documented citizens, you might want to look at the LLC model because legally you can be owners of your business, of your company. Um, but oh God, let's see here. Sorry, this country is a little messed up. Sorry. So you can like a business may not be able to hire people who are undocumented, but those people can be owners of the business, and they each have their own individual LLC, and those LLCs band together, and it's technically maybe a marketing co-op or producer co-op kind of thing, but like um, in practice, it's I shouldn't say that. After my comment earlier, I think it should be it can act in some ways as a worker co-op. So um, yeah, and just be aware of your tax situation. Keep on top of these things. Get a worker co-op specialist, bookkeeper or accountant. Those are really important. Um, but yeah, there's no strict standard definition nationally or certification for worker co-ops. But these are some things to keep in mind. Let me see. Um, and then just for context, this is from the DOWI US Federation of Worker Co-ops report. Um, so in their data collection, they found that the LLC model was most commonly used. That was those they didn't have the full data set of information, but you know, for the data set they had, they got a good response, and out of those, about 40% were LLC, used the LLC model. Um, another like, and not every state has a worker co-op incorporation option, so it makes sense. Um, the worker co-op model, worker co-op incorporation was a third of the group, and then other folks did other forms of corporations. Before I move on, are there any questions or comments? Thoughts? Okay, well, let's keep moving. Um, so financing and funding. So let's see. Has anyone here already started trying to finance or fund their co-op or a co-op that they're working with or have examples? Karina? Awesome. Does anyone want to share? Oh, no worries. Um,
Sure,
yes. Oh, go ahead.
I'd share. This is Dennis Olson from UFCW, and
Okay.
we've been working for over 2 years, or just about 2 years now in Rhode Island, trying to um, get worker co-ops organized to apply for 6 adult use cannabis licenses that were set aside 2 years ago in the legislation, state legislation, and reserved exclusively for worker-owned co-ops. And Local 328 hired a full-time organizer, Emma Carnes, and I've been working with her ever since then to put those co-ops together and try to get financing. And that's been a long road to hoe, and we're closer, but we haven't quite got over the finish line. But the rules are coming out within the next month or two, and then there'll be a 30-day comment period. So we have about four core groups of folks who are mostly BIPOC worker owner or potential worker owners that are putting their business plan together, getting trained, and trying to get viable applications in for those licenses.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, that's a really powerful example, an exciting one, because it's so tailored for a group and, industry that really could use that, right? Like where people have been historically exploited and, like I think that's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and it is the biggest challenge of all that is that it's federally illegal, of course, to you can't use the banks, you can't use normal financial institutions that are federally chartered. So we've been pushing really hard to try to network and find socially social equity leaning investors and figure out investment structures to make that happen.
Are there any like state level banks or credit unions that have been good?
There's the People's Credit Union in Rhode Island. We talked to them early on, and they do finance cannabis. And we haven't actually circled back to them lately. And then there's also, when we talked to that woman, there is a bank in Rhode Island that also does financing of cannabis within Rhode Island.
Nice. That's good. Because I know like at Shared Capital, we just weren't able to because of the federal issue,
Right.
which is sad, unfortunate. And I'm sorry about that, but I'm glad you're talking with them at the
Yeah,
state level. Thank you for sharing.
sure.
Yeah. So let me see here. Can you incorporate to make a collective bank or credit union? So credit unions are technically already a kind of co-op. Um, Let me think here. What services, Melissa, what services would you think about you that you'd want it to provide? Like for individuals, maybe like a traditional, like, hey, I need a bank account, that sort of thing.
Coming online. Um,
Hey.
I meant in reference to is it Dennis Olson there? Because I've seen a lot of
Oh,
videos online where individuals are incorporating as their own bank so that they can do
wow.
real estate purchasing. So like with $50,000, I think you can go ahead and set that up for yourself. So then you could maybe do the funding that way. I'm not sure.
Interesting. We'll have to look into that.
So I would recommend going on to YouTube and you know, watch a fair number of videos, but learn about the process of becoming your own bank. Or I have personally always done credit unions, so I mean, maybe it could be the same kind of set of circumstances, but very small, very independent, and really to fulfill your purpose mainly. But you might find that there are other reasons in the future why that incorporation might have really helped you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
For sure.
Um, Awesome. Well, yeah. Well, this is great. And I just want to make sure to cover a few other options as well for funding your co-op. Um, you might have community investments, and that might be in the form of donations, like through GoFundMe or direct donation. It might be through let me think here. It might be through capital raise, like Real Pickles. If you look up Real Pickles Cooperative, they did a big community investment effort and got a lot of money to start their worker co-op. You might take on debt, and ideally you find a co-op friendly lender like Shared Capital where I work, or Leaf, or Seed Commons, or CoBank, possibly your credit union, although not all of them are familiar with worker co-ops. You can also have non-voting shares. So the voting shares traditionally, like at Equal Exchange, I'll just use as an example, and they were the first ones to do this. They started in 86. They have Class A shares, so that's what I had as a worker owner. We each had one voting share, and that's what I bought and got back when I left. Um, and then they also had Class B shares, and that's where people can invest in the co-op and get a small return if it's profitable, but they don't get to have a vote. And for a lot of folks, that's okay. They just want to support the co-op and make a little money. And they're willing to give up, willing to take a little risk by not having a little say, you know? Um, and I want to shout out Clark Arrington, who created that. He was an excellent legal scholar or legal co-op legal expert and co-op developer, and he recently passed. So just want to honor him and all the work he did. And he actually structured that at Equal Exchange. He was the first person to do that. Um, Another option is like the members' equity, so that Class A share I mentioned. That's a big one. And the larger a percentage that the worker owners have in the company, the more control they ultimately have, right? So ideally, they're able to contribute a fair amount so that the co-op is less and less reliant on outsiders or another bank or whatever it is, you know. They may do a GoFundMe, maybe a grant. So maybe you can find a nonprofit fiscal agent and get support with obtaining grants, or sometimes there are grants specifically for co-ops. I put a link to the CDF fund options. I've gotten a few of those for different works on like that, especially if they're going to be useful for other co-ops or other people. Um, yeah, so those are some funding options. Shared capital in particular, I wanted to make sure just to share who we are at Shared Capital. We're a $25 million national community development financial institution loan fund. And we were founded by co-ops as a self-help revolving loan fund with about $3,000 back in the 70s. And we're a co-op ourselves, which is really powerful, I think. We're a co-op of borrowers, and there are about 300 members right now. We finance any co-op, business, housing, etc. And we have a mission to create a more just, equitable, and democratic economy. So a lot of times it's hard for worker co-ops to get funding um, because a traditional bank will ask for a personal credit score for like all 20 people or something, right? However many worker owners there are. Or they'll ask for personal guarantees. So somebody might have to put their own personal home or car on the line. And that's a huge risk, you know, especially when you're in a co-op and you're sharing that business together. So what we do is we don't do is we don't look at personal credit scores. We don't ask those. We do not do personal guarantees, which is really important to me. So nobody's personal car or home is on the line. We don't look at social security numbers or ITINs. So if you're undocumented, awesome. Like just come to us. You know, please, we want you to come to us. Like this is to help make it more equitable. Like this is our money as a co-op in a community. And we don't look at proof of residency or anything. So we only review that co-op entity, that business entity. So feel free to email me and reach out in that capacity as well, if you like. Did anyone go to Mark Fick's Housing Co-op webinar here? Mhm. He's my coworker. He's our senior loan officer. All right, so I'm going to talk about some challenges and solutions. But any any um, things to check in on before we keep moving? Okay. All right. Well, let's keep going. So I wanted to share some challenges and solutions that I've seen throughout my time as a worker cooperator. Um, let's see here, and just kind of talk through some different options. So one big challenge is healthcare. It's really hard, like it can be really hard to get your co-op up to speed enough to get healthcare right away. And so that's something you want to consider, like how, you know, if people need that, you know, if it's, especially if you're doing like, if you have true employees who are going through W-2 route, and not just like 1099s, you want to think like, how do we address this? How do we get healthcare? So one way can be through again, the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops, worker benefits. Um, they have dental and vision. They're starting some retirement, which is amazing. Like I never thought this would happen. I'll be real. When I was little and my dad did this work, you know, growing up, this makes me so happy. It's an honor to be alive during this time. Like very exciting. So, you know, and it still has a little ways to go. Sometimes, you know, some states don't have the full insurance yet, but at least they're working on it and they're trying. So you might want to check this out. It may or may not solve the whole picture, but it might be part of it. Another challenge that I've seen is getting on the same page at the same time. So, you know, some ways, like, so for example, like, um, maybe you have some folks who are, working other jobs, full-time jobs, and it's hard to like make extra time to start a whole new company, or maybe, it's like that balance of meeting your own needs while starting something new that will meet your needs, but hasn't quite started yet. You know, it's like that little like catch 22, middle stage. Um, so some ways to address that are to plan far ahead. That's one way. Um, make some really clear plans, time frames for steps in between to meet your goals. Like, um, and then to be flexible with each other. So I know like with the Johnny group, we're really flexible. There are about 6 of us and we'll work with each other on projects. We'll make sure they get done. But, someone might be busy one day and can't make a workshop, so someone else will step in for us, um, or vice versa. Like, so we're flexible with each other and care about each other's needs. That's part of building at the speed of trust, like showing that you'll be there for each other, that you're happy to like help each other, that you care. Um, I think that's really powerful. You don't even have to like be best friends or anything, but to just like show that you care about each other's people. Um, and then also start on smaller projects together and keep building those up until you can build something larger and maybe have a little savings and buffer for the slower times. So these are just some ways to address some of that. Um, so I talked a little bit about this, but worker co-ops are especially important for folks who don't have documentation status, citizenship, and that's also very important. It's important for immigrants, um, and like I mentioned the LLC model earlier, so I've already talked about that some. Like that's a good way. There's some good resources for that. So I put those in the bottom there. Um, so each person has their own little individual LLC and then contract through the co-op. And it's a way to work collectively and still get access to capital resources and work together. So just so you're aware of that, I want to make sure. Naima, thank you for sharing. Do you want to share a little more about the insurance part?
Yes, well, I think it can be complicated, but that's a free service from, well, at least it currently is through the government and also your state to have people help you get affordable insurance. And I was wondering for those organizations that maybe can't afford to give their members their own private insurance, if they could maybe help subsidize the marketplace for the people who do have to pay, because it is kind of a tax based to get the cost savings. And sometimes the marketplace plans seem um, not not that affordable. So maybe that's a way to do it without spending as much money
What
to
a great
utilize the
idea.
resources that are already out there.
Oh my God, thank you for sharing. So that's a great idea. So the co-op helps pay a little bit for their health care that they still have to get through like the public marketplace, but they get a little support with that through the co-op. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Awesome. Um, I might reach out to you later if you don't mind.
Sure, please do.
Thanks. Um, excellent. Um, so yeah, so I'll just wrap up a few more things and then we'll go into breakouts. Um, so this is like a list of special considerations or challenges that I've seen with co-ops. So one major thing is just like it's, I like to say that co-ops are a really good tool. They're a tool. Um, and they're a really good one, but they're not like the end solution. You still have to um, use that tool properly and work with it. Um, so you still have to unlearn some of the negative stuff that we've learned at our traditional workplaces or jobs or economy, right? So in our broader economy, there's still a lot of, or our broader society, there's still a lot of sexism or racism, um, or individualism, right? And just because we formed a co-op doesn't mean that that all goes away. We still need to work on ourselves to unpack that and see how we can work together well while unlearning some of those things. Um, I see that, these things still happen in co-ops is what I mean. And we just got to still learn how to care for each other the best we can. And to me, that's unlearning some of this stuff, the capitalistic tendencies or prejudices, negative prejudices. Um, and then we also want to think about, if the founders, like down the road, like once your co-op success, growing and getting bigger and it's more than just the people who founded it, um, what if the people who founded it still like want to kind of be in control, because it's their project, it's their baby, right? Like they invested so much and did put up a lot of risk, right? To start it up. Um, so how do you make that transition smooth? And again, like learn what it means to be a collective owner instead of an individualistic kind of owner. So normally we're talking like normally in society, we're like, I'm going to be an owner, like I will be the boss, the boss lady or, you know, whatever it is, Um, but in a co-op, you're actually in a worker co-op, you actually have to learn a whole new type of ownership that's collective. And it can be really hard for folks at times to unlearn the individualistic ownership, because especially if you're not used to it and you're like, hey, I'm finally an owner. Let me do my job. Let me do what I want, you know? But but actually like it's like you have a voice and you have to like everyone else does too, and you have to work together. So that's a different kind of ownership than just bossing other people around. And that's a second, besides the team building thing, that's my number two thing that I've seen contribute to the downfall of a co-op, which is really, unfortunate when that happens. Um, but just not really like just kind of replicating what that ownership means in the traditional economic sphere instead of really learning collective ownership. Um, so these things have like real implications. Um, and then is there a meaningful, clear work path towards worker owner power for everybody who's a worker owner? Do those in roles of management, if there's management, do they support that participation of the worker owners? Do they give people time to participate in meetings? Do they give them time to keep educated about co-ops? Um, And then, making sure that management structure, again, if you have managers or even people who just are a little more popular, it doesn't even have to be managers. Like, does that start creeping into governance? Like, hey, I want to make sure I my manager's not mad at me. Maybe down the road I want a promotion, so I'm going to keep I don't want to like stir the pot and ask for more money or vote yes on getting the pay increase. Like that's not good. People need to feel like they are safe in their jobs and their managers are supporting them and using their voice. So there's still these dynamics going on. Again, we gotta like unlearn some stuff and relearn some good behavior, positive behavior. Also aligning the business model with your mission. I recommend a practice, like a practice you could do with a co-op is go through the 7 co-op principles and think about how that translates to your business. Just like brainstorm ways each one could possibly play out in your business and support your co-op financially. So, just are there different ways that you can like be creative and, um, again, like I was talking about earlier with the janitorial co-op, cleaning at religious group, places of worship or equal exchange and their interfaith program, customer base, like there are different ways to align the business model with the mission. And then the last one is outsider influence. You want to make sure that the workers have the final say. That might be you want to make sure that if you're a co-op developer, you're aware of how much your voice is impacting. You want to help facilitate those decisions versus telling people what to do necessarily. You want to inform them so that they are making good decisions. But um, um, but like, yeah, you want to make sure that again, like, what is your like, how are you helping people start a co-op, or yeah, and then with folks with money, I've seen like so many times where someone thinks that they think of themselves as being aligned with the co-op model and mission and worker co-op mission. And they might be rich and they want to like give a lot of money to a group, right? A co-op. But they actually like want to have more of a say than they can have. So that happened all the time. Like my dad had to used to have to like turn down money, which was really hard because they did not have much money as a co-op. But he would have to turn it down at times because people were expecting to have more of a say, like a traditional investor, than they actually were supposed to, and he would have to remind them, hey, the worker owners are the ones who get to make that decision. Like we don't get to tell them what to do, like, or you don't get to tell them what to do. Um, or, like I was at Equal Exchange and I was at a festival once and someone came up to me and they were like, hey, I am an investor. I'm a Class B investor, a non-voting share investor. You know what I was talking about earlier? And they're like, I really should be having a vote. Like they were like, I really should be able to vote because I have money in your company. And I'm like, why are you telling me this? Like, I don't agree. Like I'm a worker owner, like you know what you're getting into. But I thought that was pretty gutsy of them. But whatever, it happens. Um, so you know, you just want to like be aware of these things. Oh yeah, and another way to address some of these challenges is, of course, Principle 5, my favorite. I'll be real, it's my favorite principle. I love it. It's education, training, and information. It's just a delightful principle. Um, so making sure worker owners have a space to discuss issues and a clear process to enact decisions. Um, are there multiple avenues towards leadership positions? Especially keep in mind when you're thinking about that once you start growing, make sure that you're thinking about, different identities and making sure that everyone has an equal or equitable opportunity towards leadership. So if every leader is a white dude, and everyone else is BIPOC, like that's not a great look, you know? It's like clearly there's some power dynamics, going on. So making sure that you're unpacking some stuff if need be. Um, do worker owners have a clear say in things that most directly impact them, like salary, benefits, hours, etc.? Um, and is the cultural attitude of the co-op that managers know best, or is it we're all in this together and have value? Every person, like your work has dignity and you are respected, and we want to hear from you because your voice matters. Treating each other with respect. And are there good avenues to clearly and transparently address issues of discrimination? Again, from race to abilities to gender, etc. So if there is an issue, I like to prepare for worst case scenarios personally, because like with a co-op, just like assume the worst will happen and pray it doesn't, and like set up systems so that it is less likely to happen. We don't want bad things to happen, obviously, but if you do have good avenues set up, policies, that sort of thing, then you'll be ready if they do happen. And if they don't happen, that's much better. But sometimes things happen. So, because I've seen some stuff not be handled great sometimes, right? And that's sad. That's not what we want. We don't want to replicate bad stuff. So I just encourage you to like think about these things. If you want more resources for worker owner education and training, I have a link here with just outlining. This is an article I wrote like 12 years ago, which made me really feel like I was getting older, because I'm like, oh, that's cool. I wrote that 12 years ago, but it's still relevant. Whatever. Um, co-op education is co-op education, and um, so you can read these things, just learn more about what that can look like in practice. Again, worker co-op associations, you could start some like things you can do with an association are listed here. Shared marketing, shared learning, book clubs, um, events. Uh, yeah. And there's a list of associations down at the bottom there if you want to see if there's one in your area. So, um, and then community building. So you want to think like, uh, like cooperation among cooperatives, principle 6 of the co-ops. How can that look for your co-op? Here are some resources for learning and um, continuing to see what that can look like. Uh, we're not going to do this exercise, but I thought I'd just add it in here for you to do with your co-op if you want. So you can assess your ecosystem and map it out for your co-op ecosystem for your particular area. You can say, how would you describe it right now? Where do you want your ecosystem to go? What's your vision for your local ecosystem? And then for each of these different factors, you can just jot down a few notes of what's in your local area. And you can say, here's what we have, and then say, here's where we want to go. You can start brainstorming, and then you can say, oh, are these connections, like, are these possible customers? Are these, maybe we could do some education of our politicians and get some money down the road, whatever that is, right? So this is an activity for you if you want to do it on your own down the road. Now we're at the breakouts. Yes. Um, before we go on, is there anything that anyone wants to say or talk about or ask questions? Is this information useful to you, or is there anything you think would be helpful to chat about before we move on to breakout? Dennis.
Yeah, I would just hit on a couple points that you talked about a little bit earlier, like the challenge of healthcare. And that's one of the things. So I've been working with Ellen Vera out of Co-op Cincy and others from there on a union co-op model where you're merging the union with the co-op worker-owned co-op model. And that's one of the promises we're trying to explore is the ability of a union to bring to the table lower healthcare costs where a co-op might not be able to afford the market that cost of a traditional plan like or on Obamacare, but depending on, and it varies from local to local and union to union, but what unions can do is block negotiate with our tens of thousands of members with insurance companies lower rates. So that would be like the idea. And then the other angle we've been exploring is apprenticeships with unions. And so unions with a willing employer with a contract can create a trust under the labor laws and apply for state and federal labor department grants to finance for funding for apprenticeships. So Local 1189 in St. Paul actually applied for one with the help of the Minnesota Department of Labor for we were trying to do a hybrid worker farmer owned co-op with a union contract. And they applied with some grocery store co-ops that had meat departments for a meat cutter co-op. And if they didn't get the grant, but if they had gotten the grant would have funded the development of the curriculum, and then it would have paid $6,000 to whichever employer hosts the apprenticeship and does the training in their workplace. They would have gotten $6,000 for every employee trained. So you're actually, as we're putting together these business plans in Rhode Island, it's like we're looking at that as an example of bringing like another revenue stream into the business plan where we're actually able to uniquely tap labor department money that nobody else can really, well, other people can tap the money, but we have that unique path as a union.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I also I meant to mention unions earlier, so I appreciate it too, because like they can be a really good tool to address some of the workers' rights, labor rights issues, especially as the co-op grows. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Let's see, we got a chat. Um, oh yeah, awesome. So, all right. So for the breakout, we're going to read through the scenarios. You're going to choose one to discuss. Um, it's probably easiest just to do whatever your team number is, um, and choose a report back person. And so these are the scenarios, and I can drop them in chat too, so you can see them up close, and choose one, or find your associated number, group number. But basically, I want you to just chat with chat with your group about how you'd address this, how you'd address these different things that happen. Um, and bring in some of the concepts that we talked about, and ideas. So yeah, any questions? I'll go back to that in a minute, but any questions before we get going? Joan.
Do you want us to try to address all of those?
No, just choose
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Or two. And it can be your group number if that's easiest, or if you don't like that one, you can find a different one and chat about it. But just kind of get the wheels turning and talk through some common scenarios. All right. Well, I think we'll do this for maybe 15 minutes. Is that good? And then maybe we could do a quick 5-minute report back. Is that enough? Okay. Um, awesome. So yeah, let's break out and we'll go from there. So I'll stop sharing. I'll drop this in chat and I'll stop sharing.
I just opened the breakout room so they can see able to join.
What's that? What'd you say?
I opened the breakout room so they should be able to join now.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. see. And I guess we can pause recording for a minute, or, just lower in breakouts. Oh, wait, did they have, oh my God, I forgot to put the things in chat. Did they have the scenario?
I think so because I think this screen sharing is also off. So let's see what they say.
Oh no, shoot. Oh my God. Let's do it. Oh, I just dropped them in chat. I meant to do that. Shoot. Well, we'll see. Hi. Did you guys have the scenarios? I just realized I forgot to put them in the chat.
We just remembered
Oh my
like
God.
the
I'm
first
so
line had,
sorry.
honey, that's okay because we filled up our time. We had a good conversation.
Okay. Well, that's good. We can also talk about some together. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. I feel so silly.
No worries.
Ooh. Well, I put them in chat. So, oh, good. Thank you, Karina. My God. Thank God you're on your game on top of it. Um, well, okay, so I know we didn't go through the exact scenarios, but I was thinking maybe we could just spend 5 minutes before Q&A or 10 minutes just like talking through whatever matters to you, and then we can throw out some scenarios if folks um don't have much to say, we can just talk through a scenario or two together. So would anyone like to just do a little report back about what you discussed in your groups?
Well, we realized we lived in close proximity to one another.
Oh, nice. Who are you in a group
So
with?
I was in group one with Anwar, and well, I already knew Kelly. And so we were sharing, he asked the question if anybody was in a co-op. And when I shared with them that I was working with a group, um, becoming a co-op educator, that's why I'm trying to soak up all I can. And the one group that we're working with is in Warrenton to start a grocery co-op because the one grocery store that they had in town left because, it didn't meet capitalistic um, model financially. And so as I'm selling him that, he says, "Oh yeah, I've heard about that group. I'm in Durham." And I was like, "Ah, small world." And it just went from there. And we kind of remembered the question and said something about if somebody's late, and we kind of skimmed over and says, "Oh, we just figured that out amongst ourselves." So we wouldn't it's not like we would bring the hammer down on anyone. It's like you give grace, you understand. Um, and then we went back to the subject of just learning more about co-ops and the different sectors and how it can be applied. But I thank you so much. And I said to them in the group, you used the term, and I hadn't thought about it before, of co-ops as being a tool. It's really a tool. I've always been saying it, thinking of it in terms of just it being a business model, but it could be a tool in a lot of ways. And one of the ways that I kind of shared with my group is my family. We've got this land here. We're trying to figure out how can we secure this for generations to come. And so now that I'm thinking about this as a tool, when we do this food truck park we're talking about, and then we've got another parcel where I really do want to pick your brain about the co-op housing, because I'm particularly interested in establishing some sort of affordable housing for teachers. That's my soft spot, and that's where we have a great need here as a part of just recruiting um, quality teachers to this rural community, because housing and quality of life, you got a life after 4 or 5 when you're finishing school. And if you're a young person, 25 years old, coming out of college, and you want me to go where? You want me to live where? In the woods where? And there's nothing there. So, yeah, but I'll keep going on, but I'm going to pause and I'm going to yield to the group.
Thank you for
Carolyn,
sharing.
Carolyn,
Thank
I do want to share with you that I worked in cooperative housing for over 30 years.
Oh yeah, we got to talk, brother.
Yeah, and I'm willing to chisel down with you some discussion around how to get that started.
Yeah, because this is where I was going to go with Esther, because we already own the land free and clear, and it's just like, how do I structure this? Is it co-op where, again, it's the tenant owners? I don't know. That's what I want, but I want to make sure that however it's structured, that I'm mindful of that 30% to annual income, affordability, all of that
Hmm.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hmm.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share any thoughts you've had? I guess we could also move into Q&A if you want, or if that works. Yeah.
Oh, if you ain't gonna say nothing.
I guess then we can go ahead with Q&A. If anyone has any questions, if they could add them to the chat, or you can also raise your hand and we'll go ahead and unmute you. Anyone have any comments that they would like to add to or anything like that before we close?
Well, yeah, and we can go through a few of these if folks, don't have anything. Let's go through a few
Yeah.
scenarios. So, um, I dropped the scenarios in chat. And so let's see here. Let's do number 3. So a worker co-op is having trouble getting people engaged beyond their daily job operations and into the co-op part, which is like governance, education, participation, voting, etc. So, a bunch of folks, often some issue you might see at co-ops, worker co-ops, is that some people just want to go do their job and leave, and they don't want to deal with the democratic part or the governance part. You know, I've seen that a lot before, and um, how might this like what are some reasons people might feel that way? What are potential pitfalls if this is not addressed? And what are strategies for addressing these challenges? So basically, like, how do you get people more engaged? Why might they not be engaged? Yeah, Anwar, go ahead.
My guess is and sorry if there's background noise, I'm driving at the same time, sorry. My guess is that as for an example, our co-op, we don't put a lot of emphasis on cooperative education. So we have a lot of folks who come in looking for a job. They're good at, we're a grocery cooperative. So, they're looking for jobs in their fields. They pick up this job. Well, this seems like a nice place. But the cooperative part of our title, they're not really engaged with, and we don't engage them with it. And so I think by default, folks come to work just like they do with any other place. They do their best at their job and then they head home. So I think we don't appeal to any curiosity that they have or cultivate any curiosity on what the cooperative model means for our co-op and where that can take us as well into the future. So I think that's one thing.
Excellent. Thank you. So what some things I'm hearing are like one is like education, like what does that even mean to be part of the co-op? Maybe this is new to them. you know? It's new to a lot of people, like maybe they don't know what they don't know. So helping them understand it, and then also like how their voice can like have an implication for the co-op in the long term. Naima,
Yeah, I don't know that I have a solution on that, but I have in talking to people who were successful with cooperatives, not necessarily a worker one, but there was a low level of utilization, and it seemed like the people in the community didn't appreciate, took it for granted. So I don't know if you have any, this is probably like not the question part,
it's okay.
but I don't know if anyone else has some suggestions on that, especially having like a established co-op, maybe like, how to maintain the, appreciation and participation and interest if it's, people are taking it for granted.
Nice, thank you. Does anyone want to share some thoughts? Carolyn.
Um, that this might be an opportunity for the co-op to do some more things in the community so that the community becomes aware of, because you're saying, am I hearing that right? In terms of increasing, just like Anwar said, in terms of increasing the understanding of the folks who work at a co-op, but just continuing to inform the community because folks are moving in and out and may not be familiar with what's the difference between, oh, it's just a cute little organic store, because most people will just see it as that and not realize that the co-op, as one of the principles, having care for the community, demonstrates it in a way that community members, everybody knows, oh yeah, that's the front porch. They do all kinds of stuff. They do the food drive and they host supper club parties out in the parking lot. So it's growing in terms of as an entity, developing the relationship within the community itself so that it will further garner continued support. I hope that's where you were going with it because that's where my mind went. So
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. And I dropped a few thoughts before I forgot them in chat. I always forget if I don't write it down. Um, but you might want to think like, what need is it meeting? Could it better meet people's needs? Like, is it their reason? Like maybe location or cost, like maybe there are ways you can like advertise the bus line nearby, or maybe you could advertise we have a sale every Friday or something on whatever, or whatever it is, like just like how, or like, are you offering the products and services that are needed? Whatever that is, like just maybe do a little surveying of folks and see what they say. Um, like ask them. And then like you were saying, like, do they know what you do? Can you educate further? And then also like a big one can be like fresh activities and programming. Like maybe maybe it's a stop along a 5K, or maybe it's part you go to a festival and you advertise or whatever that is. And then like finding partnerships that are like pieces of a puzzle. Like there's this one rural grocery store, not a worker co-op, but this rural grocery store out in Minnesota that I interviewed once, and they had a partnership with the American Heart Association in their rural community because heart disease was so prevalent there. And they were providing like good, healthy food. And I was like, what a great idea. Like, I mean, I might not have thought of that. You know what I mean? Like, that's a unique partnership, but it makes sense. So, like, maybe there's some partners where you can both support each other's work. Like, I like to say, like, pieces of a puzzle, like we're all part of a puzzle. Um, those are just some thoughts. I don't know, but yeah. Well, okay, for the involvement piece with a worker co-op, like why might someone not be involved? And this is like, what are some reasons? are there any other reasons people might not be involved? Like, why are you not involved in something? Or you know what I mean? Like, well, I'll just share what something I'm thinking of is maybe they don't see how it matters, right? To their direct job or well-being. So maybe they're like, I don't want to put forth all this energy to learn about the policies and the issues and be on the board, read all these documents if it's not even going to impact anybody and things are just going to keep running the same. So maybe there's some education there for like how people can impact, their livelihoods through the governance of the worker co-op. How their voice, even though it's one part of many, it still matters on how it matters. And like, yeah, Joan.
I just want to say that I'm a researcher and I've never been a member of a worker co-op except as like a child member of the Park Slope Food Co-op.
Oh, nice.
But when I studied worker co-ops, one of the things that I found was that folks got involved if they saw that sort of governance as a form of management. And like instead of having one manager who you pay a lot of money, you have a lot of people managing and you pay them for that. So you pay them to go to meetings and you pay them to do the work of managers. It's just spread out. And what I found in my research is that when people get paid to do their work, they do their work.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome. I'll have to look up where can we find your research? We'll check it out.
I wrote a book called Working Democracies, Managing Inequality in Worker Cooperatives. I'll drop a link in the chat if y'all are interested.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you so much. That's really important. Appreciate that. Cool. Yeah,
But
that's a great
some
point.
board,
Oh, yeah.
go ahead,
Oh, just real quick,
go ahead.
at Equal Exchange, we had what's called 10% time. And 10% of our 40 hours a week, so 4 hours a week, we could use towards the co-op. And that was just part of our job. And I think that was, it wasn't a perfect system, but it was definitely like a very important part of getting more participation amongst 100 people, So I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a great point. And thanks for dropping the book. Kelly.
I've known of some groups that make it a rotating kind of a thing to help people get over the stigma
Nice.
that's attached. They don't want to be in a position of being people thinking that they think that they're better than somebody else.
Okay.
And so they're reluctant to take leadership positions in an organization. And if there's a tendency in the organization to have to experience that, it has open seats on the boards, then what you might do if you can't bribe them with paying them, which is not a bribe if you're doing this, if you're an owner anyway. But you can look at that, but you can also just require them. You guys, everybody has to do their 10% or whatever you folks are up to with that. It's an expectation. And if there's a lot of times what they find is that once they get into the habit of being taking a turn, that they'll go ahead and get started and take more responsibility. There are plenty of folks out there that don't want to take a leadership role because they're afraid to do it.
Yeah. Right. And that's where some of that training could come in to like do this work so they feel more confident, that they know what
Right.
they're doing. I love that idea of the chart, rotating chart. That's a great idea.
And Esther, I guess too, if it's incorporated in the onboarding as a part of the initial training, um, for new worker owners, so that there is that, at the onset, the understanding. You set the expectations
Yeah,
from the beginning.
that's great. Yeah, thank you. Something I'm thinking about is that at Equal Exchange, we also had mentor buddy pairs where new onboarding worker owners, like in that first year period before they got fully voted in, they had a mentor and they were the buddy, mentor buddy. And it was just like someone they could like feel comfortable to just like eat lunch with once a month and chat about how things are going or ask any questions, that sort of thing. Um, but I think a big one to me is just making sure that, you know, maybe make sure they're good, clear. There's training, there's pathways and processes to join. They know how to be part of the co-op. Um, they know about, people know what's being talked about. Maybe you start a signal thread. You want to meet people where they're at. So you maybe people are on Signal, and so they all start a thread to just have chats about stuff. Maybe that's easier for folks to like think through stuff or bounce ideas off each other than taking an hour out for a meeting. Maybe it's a little easier. So you want to think about where people are at, and then also like I would recommend assessing power dynamics too, because like if people think that, oh, just the managers have the final say, or it's just the people with the better jobs or whatever, in the co-op that have the final say, like my voice doesn't actually matter, then yeah, like maybe people aren't getting involved as much because they don't think their voice matters. So, or if they're scared of speaking up or like frustrated. So like, making sure to encourage each other and not, like when we are having healthy conflict and constructive dialogue that can be hard at times, making sure we're still being respectful and not actually putting each other down, but talking through the issues in a constructive way. So,
There's a fellow that is on the internet. His name is Jefferson Fisher, and he's got a book that's coming out. But every day he gives you 3 little ways to manage more efficient and how to work with conversation with folks. And they're really pretty good. And if you spent time with somebody, their turn was coming up on the board, you could make some of that training with having that be a part of their training, to be reading a book like that, or
yeah,
like Joan has. You
that'd
know,
be great.
you could do something with an educational thing that goes on as part of it. And you could bring them on as a junior board member so that everybody rotates off the board.
Yeah, those are great ideas. Thank you. And I wanted to share one more thing before we go. I just remembered. So I did want to check in and just ask. Oh, well, here's one more resource, by the way. Shifting a little bit, but um, climate. Like, I want to think about the vision, like our future moving forward a little bit. So now that we've gone through some scenarios, talked through some different issues, and how to start a co-op. Um, oh, thank you. Um, sorry. Then where are we moving as a community, as a movement? This is the second of a couple workshops, and you know, hopefully we'll see each other at other events. But um, what are some future trends? One that we want to be aware of is climate justice. And I say this because this is already impacting our co-ops and our communities. So, you know, um, we need to make sure that we're ready, because there's also like a climate gap between who has resources to um, address issue like disasters when they arise and who doesn't. And so we need to like be thinking about these things, make sure co-ops are prepared, have support networks ready for things like disasters or heat waves, etc. So I just wanted to share this resource that I did with through the Johnny group. You can download, like, go through like a climate action plan, see some examples, do it with your community, your co-op. And then as we close out, what do you think are future trends? What are your dreams for co-ops and your communities? And, are there any people you've met today or heard from that you think you could work together with? Um, and while we're talking about that, I just wanted to share my contact information here so you have it. I have my shared capital contact information, and then my general co-op organizing, a Ajani co-op information, email, depending how you want to email me. Either way. But yeah, um, where are folks thinking about moving forward with this information, or, connect new connections in the room?
Well, I think that it was very helpful for me to do these little sessions. I don't know if we need to do it every month, but maybe a few times here and there as things go.
Nice.
It
Thank you.
would work out all right.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Oh, I appreciate that. That's Thank you. Yeah.
I think
What's that?
I think someone raised their hand.
Oh, Anwar. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's all good. It was great to be able to connect with Carolyn and the work that she's doing and her group is doing. And it reminds me that here in North Carolina, we have, it's been great to learn that there are a good bit of co-ops here, relative to, to states as states go. But that there's so much more work to do and so much excitement right now in cooperatives. And I look forward to, working with other folks and learning from so many people on what more we can do to meet opportunities here in the state. So I appreciate the space for bringing this all together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. If you have any final comments before we close for tonight, I also want to thank everyone for joining us. Really very great comments and great incentives for everyone.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate your voices and insights and just and listening and sharing. So it was great getting to meet you all, and feel free to reach out to me, or, I see people shared in the comments each other. I really appreciate you all. So thank you very much, and best of luck. I hope to meet you in person if I haven't already.
Well, thank you, Esther, for
Thank
for
you.
for
Thank
being in the
you.
space. Really
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Yeah, I'll definitely be reaching out to you about the resources. We are
Okay.
building a co-op, a mom's co-op. So we
Nice.
are creating a learning spaces for our kids, because where I am in San Francisco, we have an education crisis. 80% of the students, of the Latino students, do not meet the English standards and the math. And, just dealing with the system that's not really listening to us, just like we don't have any option. We need to build our own and
Yeah.
start educating our kids, because otherwise they will not have any opportunity for higher education. So I will be reaching out to you, and I will love to connect with people any other spaces. Black and brown students, I think we are being left behind, and we really need to join forces to build those alternatives. And I really would appreciate any support and any connection, and keep creating the networks so we can have the resources that we need. Thank
Oh,
you.
that's wonderful.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much for
that'd be
sharing that.
great. I've been thinking about, like, maybe we could create like a little curriculum for students on solidarity economy, and but broader, I think education is really going to be critical as well. So I appreciate you. Thank you. Please reach out. Thank you. Cool.
Thank you.
How will
I
this
know.
be posted? How will we be able to get the slides?
Oh, yeah. I think last week people were also saying, Esther. I know that is this the final slide deck that you sent me, the one that you shared today?
Yeah, it should be the same one as last time. So yeah, I can share that, maybe the PDF version of it, just to make it smaller size.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could share that with me, then we can go ahead and share it with everyone who joined us today. And yeah, we can, and then the recording will be on YouTube. So we'll share that as well. But yeah, this is the final part of our entire webinar series. So a great way to close off. Thank you so much, Esther. It was wonderful having you. And thank you so much, everyone who joined us and your valuable insights and comments. And I hope you have a great Thanksgiving break. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Yeah, appreciate you.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
everyone.
Bye.
Have a
Bye.
great
Thanks,
holiday,
thanks,
everyone.
Ron. Yeah, happy